Was it a conscious decision or a momentary lapse of reason? How did progress take priority over humankind? How could the desire for a modern way of life that threatens our future be considered a way of life? Could it be we are connected to all things in the universe, not the center of it? That suburbs in Los Angeles affect the melting ice caps of Antarctica. Deforestation in the Congo affects the typhoons of Japan. Now we must face the insurmountable challenges for what they really are: opportunities to reinvent and redesign. E squared, the economies of being environmentally conscious. Poverty and despair, like all things, are interconnected, especially in cities of developing nations. But could poverty be connected to hope by way of design?
Latin American capitals have this huge contrast between rich people and poor people. There's a lot of inequality. Cities have grown too fast. A lot of people coming from the rural areas into the cities in very short periods of time because they're looking for a job or they are trying to avoid the violence.
Bogota grew in 100 years from 100,000 persons to 7 million. So Bogota has grown in an illegal way.
10 or 12 years ago, Bogota was a disaster, really, because it lacked of infrastructure, of quality. There were security and safety problems. There was no optimism in relation to the future. The leaders of the city were very scarce, and they didn't know where to go, what to do. They didn't have a vision, they didn't have a model, they didn't have money to do things. And really the situation was very bad. The quality of life in Bogota was one of the worst in Colombia and in Latin America.
I have never known a city where the people hated their city so much as Bogota used to be. People thought it was the most horrible city. Even fourth-generation immigrants, they continued to say they were from the region they came from, but because they did not want to say they were from Bogota. It was a city that was really without hope and without self-esteem. And what is amazing is it really changed beyond all my expectations because people, and how did it change? Really because we started making a city a little more for people and not so much for cars. It sounds very simplistic, it's almost dumb, but the fact is that we are really trying to learn a different way of life.
In just 10 years, Bogota's murder rate fell 70%, from one of the highest in the world to less than that of Washington, D.C. It can be argued that this turnaround was due in part to the vision of former Mayor Enrique Peñalosa and his belief that sustainable urban design can be the foundation for social justice.
Since I was a child, I was obsessed with making a better country, a better society. I moved to the US when I was 15. Then my father became Secretary General of Habitat, the first United Nations World Conference on Human Settlements, on cities and urban development problems. Until then, I had been obsessed with equality, socialism, and economic development. But then more and more I realized that socialism didn't work through time, and that economic development would come sooner or later. But the way we created cities would really determine the way people would live and how happy they would be.
After seeing cities in Europe, Peñalosa said, "As a fish needs to swim, we need to walk, not in order to survive, but to be happy."
For 5,000 years, we've had cities, and for 5,000 years, all city streets were pedestrian only. When cars appeared, we should have at least decided that half the street would be for cars and half for pedestrians. Unfortunately, this was not done this way, and we have done environments which are very horrible, where children grow in fear of getting killed. I mean, and we think it's totally normal. Just tell any 3-year-old child, watch out, a car, and the child will jump in fright. I think now we are at a time where we can begin to correct that enormous error. So, at some point, if we want to make a city that is very nice to people, there must be some sort of restriction to car use. We are here at the Avenida El Dorado, one of Bogotá's main avenues, and we are in the Domingo Ciclovia. In Bogotá, every Sunday, we close about 120 kilometers of main arteries during 7 hours, from 7 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. And we get more than 1.5 million people coming out. Rich, poor, fat, skinny, old, young. This is a wonderful place for integration. It's the safest place in the city. In 1982, a mayor called Augusto Ramirez put this into place. And since then, it has been growing more and more and has been better and better organized. I would say this is the seed of everything that has happened in the city afterwards, that we have made a city more for people and restricting car use. I think this was the beginning of the new Bogota. When I came into office, I received a very big transport study I had for the city, which had been done by the JICA, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. And although it proposed some bus lanes and some public transport, really, it proposed 7 elevated highways. 7 elevated highways which were worth more than $5 billion. And so from the start we said, no, we are not going to do this. We did not have public transport. We had some extremely chaotic bus system, almost individually owned buses, racing like crazy. They would stop blocking the 3 lanes of road so that the buses behind would not overtake them. They would dump people in the middle of the street. There were many accidents, buses even going out of the street into the sidewalk and killing people. So instead of doing this huge investment in elevated highways, we decided we're going to move by public transport.
It was a huge battle because the buses, the public buses in Bogota were in the hands of a mafia. So it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And then comes Peñalosa and said, forget it, I'm going to take away the biggest chunk of your business. This is going to be now a system managed by the local authorities.
So they were a very powerful political group which could also bring the city to a halt with a strike. And we were going to substitute them totally by the new system. So it was a big challenge, a bit of carrot and a bit of stick. We said, we want you to become and be part of the system, for the traditional bus operators to be the shareholders in the new system.
And in fact, there are some of those previous owners that complying with certain rules and regulations and very tough ones, they can be part of the system. And that was intelligent to have them on board.
So we structured a bus system which we copied from the city of Curitiba in Brazil, and we improved it a little bit. Today is perhaps the best bus system in the world. We called it Transmilenio.
Transmilenio really shows a lot of what Peñalosa wanted to do, because Transmilenio is the public transportation system and it changes the city around it. So it makes public space for pedestrians around it, which is the main goal of Peñalosa's city model. And it has become like our, how do you say that, emblem, we identify Bogota through Transmilenio right now.
Clearly, you have to take into consideration these marketing issues. It's not just a matter of engineering. Public transport is not just a matter of engineering. We needed to make our bus system sexy. So one very important consideration was the color, the facilities, the design, and the name.
Transmillennium means going from one millennium to the next millennium. And since that occurred when Peñalosa was city mayor, we went from one millennium to another. That was 6 years ago, etc. He wanted a big name, just to have people believe and think in the long term, in big things.
We needed people to talk about Transmilenio and not about the bus. Because if we had people referring to it as taking the bus, we would not get upper income people into the system. So happily, no one in Bogota ever mentions about going to take the bus. Now they go to take the Transmilenio.
The system's infrastructure includes exclusive dual bus lanes in each direction to create main trunk lines connected to intricate feeder routes. Technological advances keep Transmilenio efficient.
Tenemos dos tipos de operación sobre unos corredores exclusivos, troncales, buses articulados que tienen capacidad para 160 pasajeros y desde la periferia de la ciudad, que son esos sitios donde vemos las líneas azules, es los buses verdes que son de menor capacidad, tienen 90 pasajeros de capacidad, alimentando el sistema troncal. Por eso nosotros denominamos a Transmilenio un sistema tronco alimentado. En aquellos sitios donde no hay suficiente gente ni pueden entrar los buses articulados, entramos con buses de menor capacidad para poder operar y traer la gente de los barrios hasta el sistema troncal.
It's saving people maybe 200 hours a year in transport times. People are able to also go farther. About 300,000 people are saving more than 10% of their income because before they had to pay 2 buses, while in this system they can change from one bus to the other with the same payment.
Transmilenio tiene un sistema de comunicación satelital. Eso desde el punto de vista de la operación significa que nosotros podemos localizar satelitalmente cada uno de nuestros vehículos en tiempo real. ¿Qué significa esto? Que el sistema siempre va copando su capacidad. Tenemos unas horas pico que se presentan en la mañana y en la tarde, y en la hora valle uno ve también el sistema lleno, porque lo que hacemos es que paramos un porcentaje importante de la flota para que los buses no circulen desocupados. Eso nos permite, digamos, tener control sobre el desarrollo de la infraestructura y su mantenimiento y tener control sobre las emisiones que no son necesarias botar al aire y que tampoco son necesarias, digamos, en términos de que los buses vayan desocupados.
Each detail in a city should reflect that human beings are sacred. Every detail. I think that the most important element in a city are quality sidewalks. Large sidewalks with ramps where at least a couple of wheelchairs can go one next to the other. And we didn't have this. I mean, the main avenues in Bogota for 60 years, the biggest roads have been built without any sidewalks, and supposedly the people who would make buildings alongside them should have built these sidewalks, but they didn't, of course, and we just had more and more just a big parking lot, more than a city.
And Peñalosa, from one day to another, he stopped that thing and he started to take these privileges of people, these abuses of people away, and they reacted.
Muy rico, la ciudad está bonita y pero no han pensado en parqueaderos. Las pocas calles que quedan, que son las calles como de zonas de parqueaderos, ya nos pusieron prohibido parquear.
Several times he said, I don't need to explain the law. I don't need to negotiate the law. The law is there, this is a public space, and I will simply recover the public space, period, right now. And probably Peñalosa made a mistake there. He could have explained better, to be honest. And there was a very strong movement, political movement, financed by the owners of the shops in Bogota to get rid of Peñalosa.
That was a very difficult war. I used to have black hair before that. It was extremely difficult to get something so obvious. I mean, I was almost impeached, and when I tell somebody abroad why I was almost impeached, it sounds almost comical today, but it was not funny at the time. It's simply because I was getting cars off the sidewalks.
Se crearon proyectos, programas de caminatas, de ciclorrutas, no afecta. La ciclorruta a mí no me sirve como comerciante, porque es que el que está montando bicicleta no va a venir a comprarme una camisa o un vestido.
Of course, he's pro-business as the most extreme capitalists, but business people that respect the rules, business people that understand that public interest comes before their private interest, and people that are willing to do sacrifices and to contribute to the quality of life of the city.
And so it takes huge amounts of money to make the flyovers, the elevated highways, everything. So if you allow these priorities to become the city priorities, you have no money left over to do parks or nurseries or libraries or schools.
When Peñalosa started to take these tough decisions, he said, I have limited amount of money. I cannot spend that money to benefit the 15%, 15% of the population of Bogota that have a car. I have 1 million persons in Bogota live in misery, not poverty, misery, extreme poverty. That's less than $1 a day to survive and to pay for everything. So I need to invest in giving water and sewage to these poor neighborhoods, and health and education, and I will not invest more in highways for people who have cars. I mean, it's even immoral.
When I arrived as mayor, I had legal order to demolish all of this because they had been squatted, invaded on private land. So we were able to negotiate with the owner. We were able to give property titles. This used to flood with sewage until here when it rained, so we put the pumping stations and the sewage pipes and all this. We built the schools, the nursery schools, the nearby libraries, the pedestrian streets.
The Alameda del Porvenir was built to run through the poorest areas of Bogota, where paved roads had yet to be built. Its radical new approach was not just in road building, but in its statement of priorities.
This is a pedestrian and bicycle street only. Here you can see how the pedestrian area, the bicycle area, and the cars are in the mud. And of course, I would love to pave these streets for cars too. It's not that I have anything against it, but if we have scarce money, we have to choose what to do first. And besides, I knew that I only had 3 years as mayor, and I knew if I didn't do some crazy project like this, no one else would ever do it.
Sometimes people may wonder, why is public pedestrian space important in a poor city where there are so many unmet needs? Well, I would say precisely this is where it's most needed, because the upper income person goes to country houses, to country clubs, to a large apartment or house with a garden. And the low-income person, for these people who live in very cramped spaces, the only alternative to television they have for their leisure time is public pedestrian space.
The Alameda is the longest pedestrian walkway in Latin America. More than just asphalt, concrete, grass, and trees, it's now part of the social fabric connecting 3 million residents.
It has like 3 ends. It's like a thread that sews the city. I mean, it goes all around the city, making connections of everything. Connecting Transmilenio. So 3 of the main lines of Transmilenio are connected by the Alameda. Then it had to go through all the big parks that were going to be built around. Then it had to touch the schools and libraries. So the Alameda connects everything. People uses it in very different ways. We thought it was going to be mainly for mobility, to get from one point to another. But some people uses it as a park. So they go out on Sundays and fly a kite and go on a bike and then go back to the house. Maybe some of them, they don't know it goes 17 kilometers long, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it changes the way of life of the people around.
A good city is, this is a good city, where the whole neighborhood is out. And this is easier to create in low-income neighborhoods because in upper-income neighborhoods it's very sad because they are all inside a shopping mall. Here they are all in the park, all their neighbors, walking, riding bicycles. See? The dogs, the families, the youngsters playing. This is what lowers crime rates. When all the neighbors know each other, they are friends.
The Alameda goes through a neighborhood that was the most dangerous neighborhood in Bogota. After the Alameda was built there, that changed completely. The city became alive, so it wasn't anymore the most dangerous place in the city. The statistics changed because of the project, and that's good.
There are many theories about why the crime rate went down in Bogota. I think that the most important thing is that the social organization gained a lot of legitimacy because people thought the city government was honest, was efficient, and was improving their quality of life. So when the system has legitimacy, people obey the law more, they denounce more those who break the law, and then the government itself has more moral authority to be strict in law enforcement.
Señor, señor, señor.
Peñalosa is determined to see that public good is not trumped by private interests, even if it means personally policing the Alameda.
We have more people killed every year in Colombia, pedestrians and cyclists, than people were killed by the conflict, the military conflict we have. So these are important issues. So I would say that a protected bicycle way is not just something cute, not some architectural element, but it is a right, unless we think that only those who have access to a car have right to safe mobility.
I would say that our creativity is very important, that we can generate appropriate solutions for our own problem. We don't have to look forward other places, but it's important to look forward, but that we can, with our creativity, produce our own solutions to our own problems.
When we have a bikeway, a protected bicycle way, this is important because it protects cyclists. ¿Cómo le va? But it is also very important because it's a symbol that shows that a citizen on a $30 bicycle is equally important to one on a $30,000 car. It's a very powerful symbol for democracy.
Enrique Peñalosa left office with one of the highest public approval ratings of any mayor. His vision continues to shape Bogota today, reclaiming the city not for cars, not for the elite few, but for all her people.
I think it's a much more fun city now. You know, a lot of people out in the streets, hundreds of thousands go out to jog, to ride bicycles. There is more color. It's like more youthful, more luminous.
Peñalosa changed our way of thinking of the city. I mean, he understood that changing the space in which you live can improve your quality of life in a big way. I mean, changing the public space of the city can make people more healthy and more happy.
Peñalosa has a special ability to have these fantastic dreams, and he's able to convert those dreams into reality as no other politician has been able to do in this country.
What is most important is the changing attitude of the people. I mean, this was a city where people thought the future would only bring worse problems. And there was a very radical change to a city where people have self-esteem, even pride, and especially they have confidence that it's possible to build a better future. By the way, I like to emphasize, we are a city that has horrible poverty problems still. We are not a model of anything. We are just trying to solve our problems, giving priority to people.
For more information about E Squared, visit our website at pbs.org. E Squared is available on DVD. To order, call PBS Home Video at 1-800-PLAY-PBS.